Hello and welcome back to Monster Biology, where we take a rather grotesque but scientific approach to studying the internal anatomy of the singing monsters. This episode's MSM draw has been suggested by Humbug. Submit your prompt today to have it featured one day on the channel. Without further ado, let's introduce our monster for today. Last episode we loaded the wheel with naturals. Now, according to the cycle, we are on ethereals, so let's give it a whirl. Oh, sit back and relax, this is going to be a good episode. So first of all, let's look at the bios for Grumpyre and its rare counterpart and record any useful information we find. According to the Commons bio, the Grumpyre's true mood is always a mystery because the facial expressions are all mixed up. It also says that it can unnerve the bravest monsters. The rare bio questions how the monster flies with all the holes in its wings. So here are a list of features. Now, I have a proposition to make to you. After conducting all my research for this video, I've come across this interesting dichotomy. Either the Grumpyre is low on the food chain, and therefore prey, or is a very successful predator. I'll present both scenarios and leave you to make your own decisions. So let us first dive into what evidence I think makes the Grumpyre prey. The first thing we will examine are the eyes of the Grumpyre. Notice that as it sings, the eyes can glide back and forth across the face of the monster. This, anatomically speaking, alludes to a very wide eye socket in the skull. Imagine a chameleon, but instead of swiveling the eye, it can move along a track of sorts. This is best explained by a complex set of eye muscles and enough skin to stretch as the eye moves, explaining the bags under the Grumpyre's eyes. The reason this shadow monster has this feature is to look out for predators on the hunt. If we look at prey animals in real life, we can see their eyes at the sides of their heads. This wider range of vision allows these animals to see to their sides without turning their bodies or heads. The Grumpyre's eyes can reposition themselves from the side, which are to scan their surroundings, to the front, where a more focused range of vision is required to operate their human-like hands. That's all well and good, but what about the changes in its facial expressions? I would argue that this characteristic of the Grumpyre is also to prevent it from becoming a meal. According to its bio, the facial expressions this monster exhibits do not necessarily match up with the emotions it is feeling. For example, as stated by the bio, it could look afraid when it's actually having a blast. This may not just be a quirk of the monster. This could be a form of defensive synesthesia, where the brain scrambles sensory inputs and outputs. Synesthesia is interesting. There are a lot of different forms of it, you should look it up. So, what if, when the Grumpyre is cornered by a predator and is feeling fear, the synesthesia makes the monster look incredibly angry? This would have the ability to unnerve the most intrepid of monsters and allow the Grumpyre to escape and continue living. Speaking of escape, let's now move on to the Grumpyre's most eye-catching feature, the inky darkness billowing out from its skin. Long story short, it is a fart smokescreen, but I'll explain anyway. My theory is that the shadow emanating from the Grumpyre is a form of camouflagic ink similar to what cephalopods have. You see, squids, octopuses, and cuttlefish all jet ink in order to escape from predators. They have different ways to do it, whether it's a giant cloud, a bunch of pseudomorphs, or ink ropes. They do this by storing up a bunch of substances, mainly melanin and amino acids, in an ink sac and ejecting it from a siphon near its rectum. The Grumpyre has an ink sac too, but instead of ejecting it as a liquid, it seeps from the monster as a gas, effectively shrouding it in darkness. This can easily be accomplished by thin droplets of melanin, or whatever dark pigment it uses, suspended in a methane cloud. Methane is the gas produced by digestion, so I suppose the Grumpyre merely needs to mist out a fine spray of ink droplets from its storage sac and let loose. With the cloud of ink obscuring the monster, the Grumpyre can make its escape. Pretty cool, right? But how exactly does the Grumpyre get the substances needed to produce ink? Well, due to its resemblance to a vampire bat and its sharp teeth, this monster is most likely a hemivore, which is an organism that consumes the blood of others for nutrients. Vampire bats puncture skin with their teeth and lick up the blood that flows out. Grumpyre would do the same. This type of feeding in the monster world should make the Grumpyre very annoying, possibly causing other monsters to hunt it and the adaptation of its defensive mechanisms. This segues into the last feature to explain, which are the holes in the wings of the Grumpyre. These are just the results of a run-in with a predator which has torn the membrane in a fight. More evidence of the Grumpyre getting attacked a lot. So that's the evidence and explanations pointing towards the Grumpyre being a prey monster. What evidence shows it as a predator? The eyes of the Grumpyre would work in a very similar way, except instead of looking out for danger, it keeps an eye out for potential meals. The facial expression synesthesia is a bit interesting to work out. My guess is that it disguises the true intention of the Grumpyre. Instead of looking malicious or whatever, it pretends to look calm and even friendly to lure the prey into a false sense of security. Then, it can move closer and get dinner. The ink of the Grumpyre is still used for camouflage, but used instead to disorient prey or to move in closer without being seen. The real change in biology in the predator version of the Grumpyre are the holes in its wings. What if they were never holes to begin with? It is my contention that in the predator version of the Grumpyre, its wings have spots covered in nanopillars. These super tiny organic structures have a low reflection rate and can do some weird things with light. The glass-winged butterfly has a bunch of nanopillars all over its wings, and it causes them to become transparent. If the Grumpyre has some patches of nanopillars on its wings, it would give the appearance of see-through holes. This sort of wing design would explain how this monster flies and make it seem weaker than it actually is, causing prey to feel at ease around it. There, we are done with the common variety. Let's hit the slideshow. Before we end out today's monster biology, let's go over the rare variant of the Grumpyre. Its features are merely exaggerations of its common cousin, with more spikes to intimidate or defend with, more wings to achieve higher velocity, and more teeth to tear flesh easier. Other notable features include its darker coloration, both in skin and ink. This can be more effective camouflage and is achieved through the presence of more melanin in the skin and ink composition. Finally, the eyes are slits, like a cat, which grant the rare Grumpyre exceptional night vision. When a human's eye dilates, it can take in 10 times the light, but with a slit pupil, it can take in 135 times. That would help out this night monster in its pursuit of a meal. And hey, while we're at it, we can imagine what an epic Grumpyre can look like. Will it be an even more extreme version of a Grumpyre? Will it have a different diet and therefore not need any of the features of its cousins? Here's my speculations. Both common and rare Grumpyres are based on vampire bats. What if the epic is something like a ghost bat or a fruit bat? That would totally change the color scheme and give it new features like a big nose or ears to help with echolocation. Maybe even with claws to help grab fruit. Perhaps the epic Grumpyre could be based off of a Honduran white bat and related to the Firehaven critter, or perhaps even a hammerhead bat going in an unexpected direction like the epic Pummel. We can only wait and see. Thanks for sticking with me to the end of today's video. Got ideas or comments? Post them below this video. I hope you've enjoyed today's monster biology. This has been Cryptanium, and I'll see you all later.